Speaking your truth. Finding your truth, then speaking your truth, right? Sometimes people say to me, Dr. B, I can't do that because I'm not like you. I don't want to share my story. I don't want to speak publicly. That is not what I'm talking about. As you work through finding your truth, you have to continue to speak your truth to yourself. And I am the worst culprit of this, right? You know, those negative things that we say to ourselves. But I often go back to what I know I don't even really believe. You know, I'll find myself saying I was a bad mother, or I didn't do enough. I wasn't enough. This is all punishment. I'm lost. I'm alone. That's not my truth. But honestly, I sometimes go there on a good day, right? And I know you do too. So remember, this is a lifetime journey. But once you know your truth, it's time to speak your truth to yourself, right? So I know that my truth is I have experienced horrible pain. I have learned to feel that pain. I have learned to find joy in my life, and I have learned to love parts of my life. I mean, I was just on the boat all day yesterday. I went skydiving. Just in my grief process, I was able to take some time to do things that I enjoy, right? That is my truth. Yes, I've been through horrible pain, but that's not all of who I am. And this has to do with trauma, grief, anything that bad that has happened to you. Yes, it changes you, but it doesn't have to define all of you. It does define some of me. I have lost both of my children. I am a grieving mother, and that is now part of my identity. And that is my story, and I'm comfortable in it, right? I told you that I sometimes see an energy practitioner it's kind of like therapy for me. And what was coming to the surface was still this spiritual conflict 2 years after Maya's death. And he said to me, I want you to say, I am happy and grateful God supports me. And I got choked up. And I'm like, I can't say that. I mean, I can verbally say it, but I can't say it and mean it. And so we worked through some things, and then he reworded it. Can you say, I am open to the possibility that God supports me? I was like, okay, I can say that. And now, a couple days after my session with him, and he does some energy work and helps move. Remember, we've talked a lot about movement, helps move these things outside of the body. And I can say that. I'm open to the possibility that God supports me. And I even, after saying that several times, I've been able to go back and I am happy and grateful God supports me. I do know that I'm being supported. I do know that this is part of a bigger purpose or plan. And sorry about the shaking. The wind is blowing the tripod. There's nothing I can do about it. But it was important for me to do this grief course in a setting where I'm actually grieving. And this is where I grieve, in paradise. Makes it a little easier. So, speaking your truth. The first choice opportunity here is finding ways to honor your loved one. And there's examples there of like, walking their dog, eating ice cream where you used to eat, listening to their favorite song. I do a lot of those things. And I remember when I landed in Miami for this trip, I went into that negative cycle, and I'm driving down and I'm like, I can't even remember where my children's favorite place to eat out was, because I wanted to go have lunch where their favorite place to eat was. And so we all get into that negative place And, I kind of spiraled for a little bit. Oh, I wasn't even a good mother. I didn't take them out to eat. That's what happens when you have 7 kids. But, it was negative talk. And it was, instead of focusing on, wow, what can I remember in this place? And I'm usually able to pull myself out of these things in 10, 20 minutes. But I just want to be real that even after doing all of this work, I still don't always speak my truth. I know my truth, and I have figured it out. Now I'm really practicing speaking my truth, and not just publicly. Remember, it's what I'm saying to me. I'm the most important person in this grief process. It's my grief, and it's your grief, and you have to find a way to speak your truth. One of the things that, on this trip, I went boating all day, and Maya loved being on a boat. She did not like actually swimming in the ocean because I don't feel like she felt like she was in control, but she loved getting on a boat and being a part of a group on a boat and doing nothing. And that's what I did on the boat. I just laid around and did nothing. And I was actually given a gift. I was given a gift of the dolphins swimming next to the boat. And you can see in my grief documentary, that's part of my story. That's part of my truth, that water and ocean are very healing for me. I took my kids swimming with the dolphins several times. And I swam with the dolphins in that grief process. And dolphins are a symbol of healing for me, and a reminder that my kids are happy and playful. And so that was a very, very special time. But I also went skydiving this weekend. And I remember trying to make that about Maya. And Maya clearly saying to me, "Mommy, I wouldn't do that." Reggie was my adventure man. And he would have been the child that did adventurous things with me. But by the time he was able, he was, pretty sick. But when he was young, we did roller coasters. And so that skydiving trip was with Reggie. Maya's like, "I don't do that kind of stuff." That's crazy, Mama. But that's my truth. I'm speaking my truth, doing things, not just, speaking it publicly. It's how I'm talking to myself and what I'm doing in honor of them. And that's your first worksheet. There's another grief theory here that I told you there'd be a couple of them in your workspace, because I worked through all of these grief theories. Continuing bonds was literally the most eternally touching to me. That regardless of what you believe, remember, finding your truth. And then speaking that truth to yourself, but finding your truth on a spiritual note. Like, when will you see your children again? Where's that soul connection? Or where you'll see your loved one again? That soul connection. And I received that through studying the continuing bonds theory. The reality is, here, when I was going through the 45 days of grief, this was my actual journey, right? So at about day 37, I had a pretty significant grief relapse. I'm like, doesn't matter. All of this work, all of this self-development, healing, I'm still alone without my kids. And I went down fast. And and you might get to those places. Just know that grief relapse is normal. And you could have an episode 10 years after the loss of your loved one. embrace those things. I talk a lot about embracing the journey of mental strength. And grief, especially intense grief of a child, a spouse, could be lifelong. And just knowing that that's normal, but remember what you've learned in this course. Remind yourself of what your truth is and speak that to yourself. Stop the negative dialogue. That is what you can have control of. The next one is about a grief theory that's very practical. And, it's not that you move on from grief, but you grow around it. There will always be grief in my heart. I've lost my children. There will always be grief in my heart. But there doesn't have to be sadness and depression and pain all of the time. I can grow a life around that. I can have new experiences. The skydiving is a perfect example of those experiences because I've always wanted to skydive. And, when my kids were young and then they got sick and I was like, gosh forbid if something happened to me, there'd be no one to really care for my kids. And so I can't do something this risky. And not in a bad way, but hey, I don't have anyone that, absolutely needs me in this life. And I want to go skydiving. So I did. That is making choices to grow around your grief. The next one's titled Mapping Manifestations, and, finding things that you love so that you can grow around that grief, things that bring you joy. And oftentimes I hear, grieving people like, nothing brings me joy anymore. And that's possible. And that is a sign of clinical depression. But think about it in time. Can you find things that bring you joy? And it might be new things. Maybe the same things are not going to bring you joy. But, mapping some of those things out right now. What are some things that you are grateful for in your life right now? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Can you find things that you enjoy? Can you find some peace? Map that out. The next one is about soul connection. And I have talked about this throughout this course. When you're going through finding your truth, what is your soul connection? Speak that to yourself. Your soul needs you to speak highly of you, your life, and your eternity. And so this is just a little worksheet to remind you to do that, to find that truth and continue to speak that truth to yourself. But if you're anything like me, the next one is about logic and emotion. I can intellectually talk about a lot of things. Oh, you have to process grief. You have to feel the pain. You have to this, you have to that. But emotionally, I fall just like you. I have relapses. I speak negatively to myself. And this is about being able to separate that logic, because sometimes the emotions, you have to feel that pain so that you can listen to that logical brain, that you can, merge those two truths together. That yes, I will always feel this pain of grief, but I will also be able to find joy and find my new truth, who I am, what I can do, how I can help other people. And, it's important in our grief journey. This next one talks about momentum. I think oftentimes in grief, people grieve initially and then they go kind of go back to work, just try to go back to life. And then grief hits them, and then they fall apart, and then they kind of pull it back together again. And what I'm saying is take this journey of controlled grief and get some momentum behind it. Because, in 1, 2, 5 years, you're going to feel like you have managed and processed this grief. But if you just let it come and hit you and you're just pushing through, you don't have that momentum. It's not the same. It is an active choice to go through this grieving process. And I these last 2 days talk about self-care and self-regulation. And I've been talking about the 5 selves from the beginning. But in reality, when I was going through the 45 days, the 5 selves didn't come to me until the end, when I was at this point of speaking my truth. Like, who am I? What do I need to do? And speaking that truth. And so, this self-care was one, making it your own. It's not about what I do for my self-care. It's what actually fills your cup, right? What fills your cup? This is just another worksheet to remind you that is part of speaking your truth, is taking care of yourself and self-regulation, right? Taking care of your emotions and knowing what to do with those and how to manage those. And we've been talking about that throughout the whole course. So ending with controlled grief is a lifetime. And as you finish these last worksheets and work through this process, just know that you can use these tools forever. Make a conscious choice to continue your controlled grief journey. Continue to develop your 5 selves, right? Self-care, self-regulation, self-improvement, and movement, self-movement, and lastly, your spiritual self. As you reckon this spiritual conflict of losing your loved one, there is a spiritual journey, a spiritual self, a part of you that is eternal. And continue to grow in that. That is not just for this course. All of these things that you've learned are lifetime tools. I'm doing it. I can't say I've done it, right? I do think, especially losing a child, takes at least 5 years of actively grieving. But I'm doing it, and you can do it. Continue to follow me on the different social medias. Learn the Mentally Strong method. Be a part of being a person that can really say, I am mentally strong. I am comfortable in my story. I am turning my pain into my purpose. And it doesn't have to be some grand thing. It could be raising your kids, your grandkids, or, whatever your life story is. Healing and being comfortable in your story. Thank you so much for the time that we've spent in this grief course.